Welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport.
Well, it's Monday evening and I've just got around to watching the Hungarian Grand Prix. It's very late. I know I've been doing roundups and reviews on Sunday night or Monday morning or Monday afternoon. This one's later because stuff went wrong at the weekend and I've been at work today, so here it is now. It was pretty disappointing. The commentators kept saying how exciting this race was, but apart from the 2 or 3 laps that Hamilton was close to Max Verstappen in the middle of the race, what excitement were they watching? Because this was another follow the car in front snore fest. I know it's not fair to compare it to Germany because that race is the exception, because every lap something seemed to happen at the German Grand Prix. Whereas this, it's the same. There was lots of overtakes in this race, but they're all DRS down the straight into the first corner, or maybe the second corner. But there's no wheel-by-wheel action except twice when the cars run off ride and they took the place. But twice in a 70-lap race isn't very many times. It's Snorefest. It's the only way I can describe this one. Snorefest. I don't understand what the commentators were talking about. Watching Hamilton close on Verstappen is just disappointing for the championship, because Hamilton now has an unassailable lead, realistically. Bottas clearly doesn't want to win. He just threw it away again this weekend. And that's not his fault. He got clobbered twice and needed a new nose cone, dropped him right down the back of the grid, ruined his race. Fine. But he is just a complete bottle job, and he will not be at Mercedes next year. I can guarantee it. I will eat my hat. I'll have to buy a hat and then eat it. But Ocon will be driving for Mercedes next year. Other than that, Sainz had another great race. 5th for the second race in a row. McLaren seemed to have made substantial ground on the midfield, scoring points regularly now. Carlos Sainz looks like the real deal for them as well. Who knows? Next year, maybe they can be on the back of the Ferraris or Red Bulls. I don't see it really happening, but they are definitely the best of the rest at the moment. With Renault and Racing Point are just nowhere, just unable to score points, and it's the Alfa Romeo of Raikkonen and the Toro Rossos sneaking in the points normally. So good for them. Raikkonen's having a great season. He is so... you expect him to be there now, because he is always in the midfield, in the points, doing the business. That's what you expect from the veteran, I suppose, but great season for him. Lando Norris impressed again, great qualifying run. Sort of dropped back during the race, couldn't keep up with Sainz, but still a good performance. Going back up the field, actually, quickly, the Ferraris were just nowhere again today. Their season's pretty much over. I don't see them catching Verstappen in the championship. Maybe Bottas if he keeps crashing out of races. They're lucky that Gasly doesn't really score many points, because it keeps them in the constructors' race for second, because they're not catching Mercedes. But this is a terrible season for Ferrari. And Gasly, who again, he qualified okay, but he dropped back at the start and he's just got to fight his way through the field. And rather than supporting his teammate, he's 6th behind Sainz and the McLaren, not that far ahead of an Alfa Romeo. I don't see him lasting a second season. I honestly think they'll replace him before too long. If he keeps up at this rate, then they have drivers in reserve who can take that race seat. Kvyat would be the top choice, I suppose, having been there before and performing well. He did score podiums when he was in the Red Bull. He just went a bit mad sometimes. Other than that, the Hasses were disappointing again this weekend. Grosjean looked great in qualifying. Magnussen didn't, if I'm honest, but when Grosjean was the only retirement in this race and Magnussen was nowhere. As I said, the Renaults and the Racing Points, just nowhere, just dying a death in the midfield. The Williams, it was a solid run for Russell. Qualified spectacularly. For him, getting 16th in qualifying was an amazing result for them. Was up to 13th in the race at one point before dropping back. It's a good solid race for him, if nothing spectacular. Obviously, Kubica at the back. Again, they didn't retire, so the Williams at least are reliable. It's probably not the most exciting season for them, but, what can you do? Fix the car would be a good start. Anyway, that's it for this week. I think we've got a few weeks off before my favourite track on the calendar, Spa, and I will be releasing videos regularly until then, and past then. I'm not just going to give up at Spa. So remember to leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe for more motorsport themed content. Thank you, and have a good one. Well, I've just watched the Hungarian Grand Prix. It's literally just finished. It's still playing to my left. This was probably the most boring race I've watched in a long time. The weather was never really a factor. It was kind of done by lap 3. So we can forget about that. And this was just another example of Mercedes are just so far ahead of everyone else. So sit back, hear my faults. I'm going to probably get a short one because I'm not. So you know a race weekend is going to start well when your pit crew are desperately trying to fix your car on the grid because you crashed it into the wall. So that's what happened to Verstappen, but luckily they managed to sort it and it didn't seem to have any effect on him. He still managed to hold on to second from a charging Bottas who had a terrible start. And this is my main problem with the man. Yes, anyone can do that at the start, just sort of jump forward, stop and then keep going and drop down to 6th, I think it was. It seems that sort of thing seems to happen to Bottas a lot more than it does anyone else, especially in the top 2, which is Bottas and Hamilton. Basically Division A, we'll call them. Everyone else is Division B. After that, Hamilton was 3 seconds clear by the first lap, and after that, it's pointless watching it. You might as well turn it off. Because this was just another Mercedes procession. It was embarrassing. Formula 1 is fucked. You never want a manufacturer to be this dominant because what's the point of tuning in? I could literally not watch the race, just presume Hamilton's going to win, or at best Bottas is going to win, and I could do something else for 2 hours. I watched the Formula 2 and Formula 3 races before this. They were far more interesting. Not a lot happened in those either. As for everyone else, Ferrari had a better race, as in both cars managed to finish. Yay. I think Vettel was still 5th or 6th. It's not exactly where you expect a Ferrari to be. Other than that, Haas did well. They were clever with their pit stops. They managed to get Magnussen into the top 3 for a little bit. They still dropped back, but Magnussen managed to score points for them. That's good. Williams, they look good in qualifying. Pretty much a non-factor in the race. Alfa Romeo, non-factor. McLaren, strangely, had a hard race. Maybe this track just doesn't suit them. Bit of a shame after the year they've had so far. Don't think either driver scored points. Racing Point were interesting. Qualifying on the second row of the grid, very, very impressive. Can't manage it in the race. They both scored points. Lance Stroll has done so well this year that I'm pretty much going to have to choose a different whipping boy because he did very well to stay in 4th. Perez had a harder race. If they're allowed to keep their positions, because I know there's a lot of stuff about their brake ducts and copying Mercedes, and Renault keep lodging appeals against them. Speaking of Renault, Ricciardo had a good race, made his tyres last. Ocon was a non-factor. Gasly retired. Kvyat, don't even remember seeing him. Verstappen and Albon did well. Albon, he's a good driver, but he needs to be more consistent. Because he's had a good year so far, but qualifying, I think it was 15th. No, was it 15th? 14th or 15th. That sort of thing hurts you in the race because you've got so many cars in front of you to pass, and the Red Bull should have the pace to be up in the top 6. And, you know, he worked hard to get to that place in 5th. It was a good drive, but he needs to be there all the time. It's no good being there at the end of the race just about by the skin of your teeth. Verstappen did well to hold on to second. Bottas should have done better, I think. Hamilton, it was a nothing drive. He was in control of the whole race. No one can match him. The Mercedes is, I would say, 50 times better than its nearest competitor. It's just not good sport. See it in touring cars. a manufacturer that has an advantage of some kind. When Audi joined the BTCC and it had four-wheel drive, the cars would have been completely dominant if left like that. They were given a weight penalty to make it more equal. You can't do that in Formula One. It's too scientific a sport. BTCC in the 90s, it made it work, and they still won. Same, they put weight penalties on BMWs because their wheel drive gave them an advantage. I don't know what the FIA can do. They can't exactly tell Mercedes to slow down or give them a weight penalty. But for the sake of the entertainment value of the sport, if you're a spectator, they should do something, because what is the point of tuning in? I could just presume Hamilton's going to win. I could probably presume that Bottas is going to be second or third in this case. At best, Bottas might win instead of Hamilton on occasions. But I might as well skip it, save an hour and a half of my life and do something else. It's so boring. This was a nothing race. I don't really have anything else to say about it. I suppose we can talk about Ferrari, because they were dreadful in Austria. I think Vettel was something like 15th in the championship with 1 point. He got 6th. It's not where you expect the top Ferrari to be. Leclerc was 10th, I think. So it's still not doing great. It's an improvement, I guess. We'll have to see it at Silverstone, which is in a couple of weeks' time. And it should be a more interesting race. It's definitely a more interesting track. I don't like the Hungaroring. I know it's been part of the Formula 1 calendar since 1986, and it's pretty much a historic track now. It's boring. There's only 2 places you can overtake. It's boring when they have touring cars there. It's boring when DTM is there. It's a very, very old-fashioned track, and it's never been interesting. You've had interesting things happen there, but whole races, very rarely interesting. I think the best one was probably 2008, which I think Kovalainen run, which was his only race win, wasn't it? And of course Button took his first win there as well. Oh, I don't know. This is probably not a good review. I'm really not in the mood. I'm very, very tired. I was sort of drifting off during this race, and then the internet went off again, so I did miss 8 laps towards the end. Managed to get it back on for the last 3. Nothing had changed, so I didn't miss anything, I guess. So that's my review of the Hungarian Grand Prix. It was boring. It's still tight between Hamilton and Bottas. Anything can happen. Silverstone, 2 races in a row. Hamilton usually wins there, so I guess we'll have to see. As to everything else, I'll be doing a full roundup because I have watched Formula 2 and Formula 3, and I have watched the V8 Supercars, which was cool. And I'm going to try and watch IndyCar before I do that. And I did watch Super GT this morning. I got up at 6:30 to watch that, which was nice. Other than that, I don't think there's too many talking points from this weekend, really. Racing Point qualified well. The rumours with Vettel joining him next year are weird. I can't imagine Lawrence Stroll replacing Lance Stroll. And he, I'm guessing, is still going to be involved with the team. But why would you replace Sergio Perez when he normally does so well for you? Lance Stroll had... I think putting Vettel in that team will ruin the dynamic of it. At the moment, Perez and Stroll are doing a fine job. Just let them do it. You have Aston Martin paint scheme next year, so you'll probably get rid of the pink, which is a shame, because I do like the pink cars. They are quite pretty looking. So yeah, that's it. It's a depressing one. This was basically a blitzkrieg. Just Mercedes, they are just so far ahead of everyone else. It's embarrassing. They are almost a different formula. It's like they're Formula 1 and everyone else is Formula 1.5. Possibly Formula 1.75 in some cases. This year's going to be boring. The rest of it, Hamilton's going to win. He's probably going to win. I think at the moment there's 10 rounds. We've had 3. He's probably going to win 4 or 5 of the rest. Bottas will probably win the other ones, and we'll have a Mercedes clean sweep, which would be probably the first time that's ever happened. 2021 is going to be boring. The regulations are pretty much the same. No one's going to develop the cars because obviously we need regulations in 2022. So Hamilton's going to win that one as well. Probably with 10, maybe 12 race wins. He's going to take all the records. He's going to be an 8-time world champion. His legacy is so hollow because the Mercedes cars are so far ahead. And if you're one of these fans who thinks, oh, he's still a great driver, the cars don't mean anything, you're kidding yourself. Mercedes, anyone could win in that Mercedes. Not fun. But I can be surprised. Maybe next race everyone will go crazy and Antonio Giovinazzi will win. We'll have to wait and see. Thank you for watching. This was depressing. Don't subscribe. Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. And first I'll address the fact that this is the first video of the week that I've actually uploaded. It's been a busy week, I just haven't had time. I did write a video and start editing it, and honestly by the time it was ready to be released it was already old news. So I decided just to have a week off. I've still got ideas, nothing's going to change, and I've got stuff coming out next week that is really, really good. I've got a plan in place for the next couple of weeks, in fact. So all is still good, all will still be exciting, so it's still a very good time to subscribe as we climb our way up to 500. So the Hungarian Grand Prix was another exciting one. A lot happened. It was another crazy race with a very unexpected result. So remember to subscribe and let's begin. If you said to me that Esteban Ocon was going to win this race, I'd have had you incarcerated as a madman, because since he returned, he's not really looked like he had the form he had when he left, when he lost his seat at Racing Point. Apart from that podium last year, he's been a bit average, and I actually thought he was in danger of losing his seat. But I don't know what happened at Hungary, whether he just happened to have murdered every single rabbit in Hungary, cut off their feet and filled his car with them, because all those cars that crashed and spun, they all cleared a path for him to get through, which is lucky in itself. He found himself in the lead of the race when Mercedes had their strategy cock up, and he never lost it. And he was very lucky that it was at Hungary. Overtaking is very difficult and Vettel couldn't really get close. Now, this was a great drive from Esteban Ocon. I'm not going to take anything away from that. But if the start didn't happen, he would have probably been around 8th or 9th. Possibly lower. He tends to drop out the points or score very little. So for him to win this race is insane and a huge achievement. And it will probably be the highlight of his career. And Alpine had a very good race because Alonso scored points as well in 5th. They had a great points haul from this race, and that's a great in their fight against Aston Martin and AlphaTauri. I think they're a bit too far off to catch McLaren and Ferrari. They're not quite on their pace. But that midfield battle for 5th in the Constructors, this was a very important result for them. As for everyone else, I guess we'll start with the crash at the start, because that really was the main thing that seems to happen at every race, especially the last 2. This time it was Bottas, and I can best describe it as Bottas bowling, because, or at least snooker, it might be better as snooker, because he potted Norris into Perez. No, Norris went into Verstappen, Bottas drove into Perez. Mercedes have taken the lead in the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships, largely because they've driven into other cars. It's an unusual strategy, but it seems to be working for him at the moment. Bottas has got a 5th-place grid drop for next race, as has Lance Stroll. Absolutely fair, that's fine. No big damage done, except to most of the cars on the grid. It did take out a lot of drivers for the race. We had a red flag again. 6 cars retired, which is pretty impressive. And it's all because Bottas crashed into the back of Lando Norris.
Lando Norris slammed into Verstappen, did huge damage to both their cars. Bottas crashed into Perez, took him out of the race. And meanwhile, Lance Stroll dived up the inside of Leclerc, got on the grass, spun him round. I think Ricciardo got involved in that one. It was a crazy, crazy start. Now, I know it's mostly caused by a greasy track, which suddenly dried up afterwards. But this was still a big mistake from Bottas, who is looking to impress other teams because he's probably not going to be at Mercedes next year. He's meant to be impressing Alfa Romeo and Williams and Versace. If I was at either of those teams, I know you have the opportunity to get a 9-time race winner, someone who's finished second in the championship twice. But honestly, based especially on this year, what do you get from Valtteri Bottas you don't get from Kimi Raikkonen? You know, their performances are obviously hugely different, but Alfa Romeo are a long way behind Mercedes, obviously. Raikkonen is, you know, he's not in form by far. He's definitely on the way out at some point. He's been there so long that, honestly, just replacing him with Bottas, though, it seems like a waste of time. I don't know why you'd get rid of Giovinazzi when he has at least improved year on year, and you can see that. So get Bottas and Raikkonen at Alfa Romeo is the most deadwood team imaginable. And as for Williams, yeah, I know the space is going to be available if Russell moves up, but if he doesn't fill that with Bottas, it seems a bit of a... There are better drivers. I mean, you've got Callum Ilott, who's another Mercedes driver, who was very, very good in Formula 2. Williams have got Dan Ticktum, God help you, Roy Nissany. Jack Aitken, who is, you know, back in Formula 2 not doing much. If you're going to replace Russell with anyone, any of those younger drivers, not Roy Nissany, it's a bad idea. It's got bad idea written all over it. But, you know, Dan Ticktum, he's a very good driver. He's doing very well in Formula 2. He's worth a shot in Formula 1, I think. Bottas, to me, he should hold himself up, be proud, don't go to a lower end Formula 1 team, especially when you have the World Endurance Championship with manufacturers jumping onto the hypercar projects, and you have Ferrari and Porsche joining the grid soon, Peugeot as well, probably others, bike holes apparently. They are all going to be on the lookout for top level, consistent, experienced drivers, and I think Valtteri Bottas would do very well in the World Endurance Championships. He's got Le Mans driver written all over him, especially his smooth, consistent driving style. I think he would be a great shout for any of those teams, especially Porsche. I think if Porsche, their hypercar project, I think someone like Bottas would be really good in that seat. Andre Lotterer is not, you know, giving himself the best CV in Formula E at the moment. Otherwise, I'd have said him. But Valtteri Bottas, I think, would do great in the World Endurance Championship, and I think that's where he should go. Back onto this race. Obviously, Verstappen had massive damage, but we had lost Stroll, Bottas, Perez. I've got a list here. Stroll, Perez, Leclerc, Bottas, and then Norris was out as well, as was Mazepin, although for slightly different reasons. That was a collision with Raikkonen in the pit stops. Both Alfa Romeos got 10-second stop-go penalties. And also, apparently, Kimi Raikkonen catching Mazepin in the pit lane is exactly the same as Hamilton hitting Verstappen at 180 miles an hour because they got the same penalty. That's Formula 1. So, after the chaos, I have got notes. I did actually write quite a lot for this one as well. So, the race restarts, and Hamilton goes onto the grid. Everyone else goes into the pit lane. At this point, I'm sure Hamilton looked in the mirrors and said some very strong words, because he must have known they'd cocked up, and the track was completely bone dry, and he was sitting on the grid on wet tyres. Everyone else is at the end of the pit lane waiting to come out. So, it looked like George Russell was going to lead the race. He had to give the places up because he jumped the queue. It meant Esteban Ocon was leading the race with Sebastian Vettel behind him. Hamilton dropped to the back. He was only a couple of places behind Verstappen, who was badly damaged. He had a great battle with Mick Schumacher, and as he said, not bad for someone with half a car. That was the highlight of Verstappen's race. It all went wrong after that. So Hamilton pits, and he gets the undercut on a few cars, and the rest of this race is basically him coming through the field. Not a lot else is happening because the cars are, there's only like 14 left for a start, and they're all spread out. So there wasn't a huge amount of overtaking, apart from Hamilton climbing up the field. He is so much quicker than everyone else. Oh, sorry, I said that wrong. Mercedes are so much quicker than everyone else in the field. It is really embarrassing when you think the only car that can stop them is Red Bull, and there's only one of those left, and it's missing pieces because Mercedes have crashed into it again. But Hamilton climbed. I'm surprised he didn't get further, to be honest. Alonso put up an amazing fight. How many laps did it take? Was it like 10 laps? And there's an Alonso mistake at the end. He locked the brake and ran wide. Hamilton got through. And he got past Sainz fairly easily, but far too late to catch Vettel and Ocon. I think Hamilton will be fairly disappointed with third. Not just because of the mistake at the start, but also because he couldn't climb his way back up to first. Definitely an opportunity to. And when you consider Red Bull haven't scored, I think Verstappen got 1 point. This was a huge opportunity to stretch out a lead in the championship that has now been missed. Gasly took fastest lap point as well, so he didn't get that. So he only got 15. So he got 14 more than Verstappen, who had like a 6-point lead or something. So we go into the summer break with Hamilton 8 points ahead, or 7 points ahead or something. Norris is still ahead of Bottas and Perez, which is a miracle. If he keeps that up, he is world champion. Fuck everyone else. Sainz had a great race as well in fourth. Unlucky to hold on to a podium, but his tyres were a bit old towards the end. It's still a good, consistent season for Sainz. He may not be getting great outright results, but he is at the moment tied on points with Charles Leclerc, which is as good as it gets, really, because Leclerc has been at Ferrari for 3 seasons, so Sainz matching him in his first season is a good job. Ask Ricciardo. That's not easy. Ricciardo had a terrible race. He finished 11th, or 12th actually. I think he dropped behind Raikkonen. So it's not easy jumping teams and matching your teammate who's been there a few years. And Carlos Sainz is doing a fantastic job. Driver of the day has to go to Esteban Ocon because, you know, no one would have expected him to win. Great job from Sebastian Vettel as well. Another second place this year. He's doing much better than I expected, apart from that spin at Silverstone. Hamilton finished off the podium. Sainz and Alonso both did great jobs. AlphaTauri did a fantastic job as well because Gasly and Tsunoda both scored points for 6th and 7th. I think they're doing fine. They're about where you expect them to be in the championship as well, especially as it's Tsunoda's first year. He's not high flying, I think he's 14th, but he's scored a fair few points. He's doing fine for where he should be, really. The other biggest story of the day was Williams, who managed to finish 8th and 9th. Not in the order you expect. Nicholas Latifi finished 8th, George Russell was 9th. There was a great radio message from George Russell midway through the race where he said, you know, whatever it takes, we'll do whatever we can to help Latifi. That's fantastic sportsmanship. Hopefully, if he does go to Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton can learn from him. It's been a hard time for Williams. Before this race, obviously, they'd only scored 1 point in 2.5 years. Only 8 in 3.5 years. So for them to score a double points finish, it was their first double points finish since Lance Stroll and Sergei Sirotkin both finished in the points in Monza in 2018. What was the other facts I had? It's the most points scored by Williams in a single race since Felipe Massa finished 7th in Brazil in 2017. And Lewis Hamilton scored more points in Hungary in 2021 than Williams have scored in 3.5 years. They're the 3 interesting Williams facts I found. But honestly, for them, this is huge party weekend. This is as good as it's going to get for Williams probably this year. They'll be happy they scored points. it's their best year since 2018. They're not too far off that tally just from this one race. They scored 7 or 8 points in 2018. They scored 6 in this one race. Something like that. So if they can get another couple of points here and there, this will be a fantastic achievement. I'm really happy for both Latifi and Russell to finally score points for Williams. Russell especially, it's been a long time coming, and it looked like he could manage it at the last few races just on pace. It's taken a crazy race for them to both score points, and it is weird that Latifi actually is now ahead of Russell in the championship. I don't know if that's going to last all year. It'll be interesting to see if it does. It would mean that Russell has been beaten 2 out of 3 years, because Kubica beat him in 2018, scoring 1 point. No, 2019, sorry. Scoring 1 point at Germany, the Hockenheimring. That wet race that was also chaotic. This was a good race. I enjoyed it, mostly because it was interesting seeing Ocon and Vettel fight for the lead. Alonso battling Hamilton was interesting as well. That was very, very exciting. It looked very close at some points. Hamilton saying Alonso was being dangerous was hilarious. He literally has no self-awareness whatsoever. If every race was like this, it'd be a very silly series. And I would argue that this is as crazy as Formula 1 gets, and it was still nowhere near as exciting as a boring Formula E race. So take this was a good race with a pinch of salt. I don't know what to expect for the rest of the season. It'll be interesting to see if Red Bull can start to take charge again once we get back from the summer break. Spa's next. It's my favourite round in the Formula 1 season. It's my favourite racetrack in the world. Belgium just does good racetracks for some reason. But I do love Spa in particular, and I'm very much looking forward to coming back from the summer break in a few weeks' time and talking about Formula 1 again. So, this channel, I will be doing more videos. I do have, I think, 3 or 4 planned for next week, and I was going to do one every day on Formula E leading up to the end of the Formula E Championship. So that's what's coming in the next 2 weeks. I will try and live stream as well, but it's difficult because I'm now downstairs. There are 7 other people living in this house, all behind the door over there. They are very noisy. The light in here is terrible. The lights actually do not work. So I have a light on in the cupboard over there and this curtain. That's the lighting. So yeah, live streaming depends heavily on what everyone else is doing and time. Time is also my biggest enemy generally, because obviously I work and have a family, so I have plans. I am going to get stuff done. This was an unproductive week, but just consider it, I was taking a quick break, and I'll be back full musto next week. So make sure you subscribe. Thank you for watching. Leave your comments down below. Tell me what you thought of the Hungarian Grand Prix of 2021. Thank you for watching, and have a good one. Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. And we had another Grand Prix this weekend, this time from Hungary. And this was the last one before the summer break, so we get a few weeks off now, which is actually quite nice. It does seem like we've had a lot of Grand Prix recently. This was a weird Grand Prix. I did enjoy this one. And it was weird because no one really seemed to do what you expected them to do, which is interesting. But once again, we're talking about Ferrari and their, let's be kind and say, interesting choices in strategy. I don't know how many times this year we're going to end up saying Ferrari mucked this up, they should have won this race. This feels like the 3rd or 4th time we've said Charles Leclerc should win, and yet he hasn't. And not necessarily because of what he's done, although that has been a factor this year, obviously, at France. This was just a weird call from Ferrari. Even the commentators couldn't understand why they put Leclerc on the hard tyres. And what I would say in their defence, whilst, again, the commentators were saying the hard tyre wasn't working for Alonso and Ocon, and I think Lando Norris was on them as well, it didn't hurt their races. So maybe Ferrari saw that, thought there's quite a few laps to go in this race, maybe the hard tyre will fire up eventually. And it didn't work. and it was probably a bad choice. But as I said, for Alonso, Ocon and Norris, it did kind of work. I mean, they were never going to catch up to the top 6 anyway, and it allowed them to hold station. And I think it only worked because other cars around them pit for new tyres eventually, and they had enough of a gap to sort of sustain themselves. They weren't quick by any stretch of the imagination, and I think Alonso was a fair way off Norris, and Norris was miles away from the top 6. So if that was maybe the hard tyres level, it's just, why did Ferrari choose that for Leclerc? None of the other front runners looked like they were going to be going onto the hard tyre. It's honestly just, it does seem to be at random, like they've picked it from a hat. Like, they're literally going, right, Leclerc, hard tyres, so random, let's do it. And that's the only reason I can come up with for it. Because if they're doing it on purpose, they need to rethink their strategies. And I honestly think someone will be looking for work during the summer break. Because I can see a big shake-up coming in Ferrari. I can't really defend it. I don't understand. I can't defend pitting him again for new tyres. Because I think, whilst he was definitely not quick on the hards, I think he had enough of a gap over Perez. Like, Perez wasn't really... I don't think he was going to catch him. Like, if he'd stayed on the hards, I think Leclerc would have finished 5th. Which isn't great either, but it's better than 6th. Maybe Perez would have caught him. But I think he could have got 5th in this race if he'd stayed on the hards. Not that he should have been on them anyway. And for Sainz, they put him on the softs very early. Again, I would classify that as a strategy mistake. There must have been something else they could have done. I guess the only other way would have been to put him on the hard tyres, and obviously that didn't work for Leclerc, so maybe they thought the tyres would last, but he started to slow down as well. He got caught by Lewis Hamilton. It's a very bad result for Ferrari. I think they actually kind of embarrassed themselves this weekend. And 4th and 6th, when they really like the team with pace. Like, I was at one point in this race expecting a Ferrari 1-2, and we didn't even get close to that. And it's a really shockingly bad result for them. Perez, I was unimpressed with all weekend. I mean, him going out in Q2, that seemed to be on pace. He probably did well to finish 6th, but the second Red Bull driver should be doing better than that. Having said that, whilst I think Perez has been underperforming, he is 3rd in the championship and only 5 points behind Leclerc. So whatever he's doing is actually working. And the Mercedes, they seem to have caught up a lot. And even though Hamilton only qualified 7th, George Russell getting on pole was a massive achievement. A great performance. And he did well in this race. He should have been 4th because the Ferrari should have been above him. But to get 3rd, another podium, he's still 4th in the championship, I think. I think he's ahead of Carlos Sainz. And ahead of Hamilton. So he's doing a good job, and I do think Russell will take a win before the end of the year. Same goes for Hamilton as well. He didn't qualify well, but Mercedes, they always tend to get their strategies right, and it really worked for Hamilton this weekend. Another 2nd place when Mercedes at the start of the year did not look like they were going to get anywhere near that. For them to be in at least a fight for 2nd is actually pretty good. I mean, I think Lewis Hamilton's like 120 points off Verstappen in the lead of the championship. I think it's fair to say it's going to be tough with only 10 races left for him to catch Verstappen and get in the title fight. But actually, Hamilton's not that far behind Leclerc. I think it's only 32 points. If Mercedes can get a bit more performance out of their car, definitely in the fight for 2nd. As for Verstappen, when he qualified 10th, I thought this was going to be a race of damage limitation. I thought there's no way he's going to win it from there. He's not going to get past both Ferraris. He's going to struggle to get past the Mercedes. At best, I could see him catching one of them, maybe getting a 4th. I mean, it's everything. Red Bull got their strategy spot on. Verstappen had a lot of pace this weekend. He looked quick. Even when he spun, which was a strange moment, it didn't really seem to faze him. He was back in the rhythm. He pulled away at the front at the right time. Even with Hamilton catching him towards the end, he had plenty in hand to hold him off. This was another fantastic win for the Dutchman. And this is what, win 28 now in his career. He's still only like 26. I mean, honestly, we could have another 10 years of this yet. And if you're into the numbers, he's racking them up pretty fast now. And this was a great drive. I cannot fault this drive. Apart from the spin, there was nothing Verstappen did wrong in the race. Like, if I had to rate it out of 10, this is a 9.5. And if he hadn't spun, it would have been a 10 out of 10 performance. And he's got a massive lead in the championship now. I think he's got like 3 or 4 races in hand over Leclerc. With 10 to go, I think it's safe to say he is odds on for champion. As for everyone else in the field, this was a race where no one retired, and there wasn't really many drivers out of place. Like Norris finished 7th. That's about where you expect him to finish, and it was an okay drive. The Alpines 8th and 9th. It's about where they are. It's not a bad result. Vettel managed to get 10th, which is probably about where Aston Martin are. Stroll was 11th. The only thing I'll say for Stroll is he's still only got 4 points, and it's only, I think, Albon and Latifi behind him in the championship, and Hulkenberg, I guess. He needs to score more points. As for everyone else, Gasly, I mean, he started from the pit lane, and AlphaTauri just don't seem to have any pace at the moment. So finishing 12th was probably a good result for him. I mean, the Hasses, did you even see them at any point during this race? I think we only ever saw them when they were getting lapped, very briefly. Ricciardo, honestly, I think he's the next one who should announce his retirement, because it's not working, and really, does he have any desire to carry on anymore? I think, honestly, it's probably best for him just to get out while it's still reasonably good, and even then it's not really that good at all. Yuki Tsunoda had a spin but didn't really do anything. I think he finished last. Guan Yu Zhou had a bad race. Bottas retired. He did have engine issues or something, which again isn't really shocking with Alfa Romeo at the moment, and their pace seems to have just disappeared. Like Bottas, the first half of the season was usually running up in the top 5, bearing on others' mistakes. Now he was nowhere near the top 10 and just ended up in retirement. Williams, nothing, just at the back, never saw him. So at least Latifi finished, I suppose. So this was not a race of major shocks. I guess the biggest shock is the Mercedes were 2nd and 3rd and Ferrari's 4th and 6th. You'd kind of expect that to be the other way around, but can't fault Mercedes on their strategy. They get that right. Ferrari, they didn't. And once again, that's the story of the weekend. Now, there's a lot of other racing to get through. I have sort of been watching it. I'm going to finish watching the second Formula E race. I haven't actually started yet. It's ready to go. Literally, I'm going to upload this. I'm going to watch Formula E. I might do another video on Formula E, which will be early hours of the morning. So stay awake for that. And there's so much else to go through. We had W Series, Formula 2, Formula 3. British Touring Cars was this weekend. God knows what else. IndyCar was yesterday. NASCAR's today, if you're into that. Stock Car in Brazil, if you're into that. Formula Regional European was this weekend. We had Nitro Rallycross. There's a lot of racing this weekend, and I'm slowly picking my way through it. But I will be back with more motorsport content this week. Hopefully we'll get another 3 or 4 videos up, so make sure you subscribe to the channel for more motorsport stuff. We can have more talks about Ferrari screwing things up. And hopefully, by the time we get to the next Grand Prix, there'll be 600 subscribers, which will be really cool. So make sure you hit that red button, wherever it is. Leave a comment, share the video, whatever you want. Thank you for watching, and have a good one. Hello, and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. And I have just watched the Hungarian Grand Prix. It is 2 o'clock in the morning, but I have been out all day doing something a little bit more interesting than watching Formula 1. Yeah, that whole argument about noise making a big difference in Formula 1, I'm entirely on side with it now. The noise of a monster truck is incredible, and I think Formula 1 hybrid engines should be replaced with monster truck engines, and possibly Formula 1 cars with monster trucks. Monster trucks are cool. And I had a great time, but I did come back and I did watch the Hungarian Grand Prix, and it wasn't really that interesting again, mostly because not a lot was happening on the track. There was some interesting strategies, and at one point it was kind of interesting watching what everyone was going to do, because a lot of drivers went on divergent paths in terms of tyre stops and that, but in the end it was pretty dull, and the same teams you expect to score points scored all the points, and the teams at the bottom didn't score points. And it's been that way for the majority of races in the first half of the year. Even when I'm thinking, oh, this track is a good track, we're going to have some good racing here, it's not really worked out that way. And I think Hungaroring, it's always been a difficult track to overtake. There's something about these cars where overtaking has become really difficult unless completely DRS assisted. This was a really meh race. It wasn't awful. There was things happening to keep you intrigued, but the racing wasn't great. I'll start with Saturday. I like the new format. I do like them having to use hards, mediums and softs. I think it did mix it up a bit, and there were a few drivers who did something very impressive in qualifying, mostly Guan Yu Zhou and Nico Hulkenberg. And we also had some surprises with George Russell going out in Q1 and Sainz in Q2. But what I would say is, I think it was interesting because teams obviously have to get used to it, and they're trying it for the first time. Once we get a few races down the line and the teams sort of have it figured out, I think it'll go back to being the exact same as what we had before. But in terms of being a strategy to save tyres and make teams not use so many, I don't think it's a bad idea. And I think it worked. I think qualifying was fine. It was close enough to what we already had that, you know, it didn't really mess with it too much. Because I do think there was nothing wrong with qualifying. But this sort of just, it's not even mixing it up a little bit. It's just, it's something different. I think Christian Horner said that it's taken away like a level of strategy with teams saving tyres or using different tyres. But I actually think this is better for now. But yeah, I do think 4 or 5 races down the line, teams will have this figured out, and it'll just be exactly as it was before. Lewis Hamilton took pole. It was very tight between the top 3. In fact, I think the whole top 10 was split by less than a second, or something close to. It was pretty tight in qualifying, but Lewis Hamilton on pole from Max Verstappen. Hamilton couldn't keep the lead off the line. Verstappen got into turn 1 and then he got mugged by both McLarens. McLaren's pace again was very impressive. Last couple of races they have been very good. Norris finishing second again is an excellent result for him and McLaren. First time he's had consecutive podiums. It's a 100% turnaround from the start of the year. And Piastri again missing out on a podium. Very disappointing, but clearly that young driver has a lot of talent. Definitely one to watch for the future, as is Norris. McLaren have a pair of very good drivers there, and if they can develop the car and keep them fighting near the top, I think McLaren could have a very interesting future, and possibly over the next couple of years be the team that really tries to take the fight to Red Bull. Mercedes have interesting problems. It's clearly a very quick car, but it doesn't seem to be quick all the time. Especially in races, it seems to like drop back and forth in terms of pace constantly throughout the race. And once Lewis Hamilton dropped back, he never really looked like getting back on the podium. I know he caught Sergio Perez at the end, but I'm pretty sure Sergio Perez had completely backed off by that point and was saving tyres. I don't think he was trying too hard. And that was really the biggest problem with this race, was the gaps between cars were huge. I think Verstappen had something like a 10-15 second lead over Norris, who himself was like 7 to 10 seconds ahead of Perez, who I think at one point was like 5 or 6 ahead of Hamilton, and Hamilton closed it back in. Piastri was... he was way behind somewhere. I can't remember how far back he was. And behind that, the Ferraris were miles back. George Russell was miles back. That's the biggest problem. You can't have any like fighting on the track when the cars can't really be near each other. Don't know what the solution is. I think it's just something with the cars, or really the lack of strategy. And I think things like, in Super Formula they don't have tyre blankets. When someone pits, they come out the pits, they're sort of vulnerable for a lap and a half, 2 laps, just because it takes time to warm the tyres up. I think that could help in Formula 1. I think fuel stops should never really been taken away. I think, as you see in IndyCar, it's a great way to bring different strategies into play. I think the performance, the way hypercars in World Endurance run, where the rules have like a set limit on what you can have, like you can have this much downforce or whatever, but you can get there however you want. I think they should bring that into Formula 1. Just have a set parameter of these are the limits of what you can be within, but do what you want to get there. And then we'll just see different cars, like different engineers pushing cars in different directions, trying to find the most speed at the most tracks as possible. That might make it a bit more interesting as well, but I know that one's a bit trickier for Formula 1. Engines, I guess, are a thing. I don't really like these hybrids. I mean, at this point, if you're not going to go full electric at some point in the future, and if you did, you're competing directly with Formula E. And I don't know how popular Formula E actually is. I think its popularity has slumped somewhat since at least a few seasons. It's slumped from its highs. I think it is still relatively popular, but I don't think Formula 1 can risk making that jump. But they can't exactly go full petrol again, because they've pushed this whole sustainability thing, and to go back on that now, it would not be a good look. But I think Formula 1, or the FIA at least, need to have a real hard think about how they want their racing to look. I think as a fan watching, at times it's incredibly tedious. There are other race series out there which provide a much higher level of entertainment, such as IndyCar. IndyCar has been fantastic this year, and honestly, if you had to choose between the two, I would suggest you watch IndyCar. But I mean, even if you don't consider it to be a more prestigious title than Formula 1, and really Formula 1 is meant to be the pinnacle, but IndyCar's pretty close. It's a high level of competition. You get great racing, and Alex Palou has been dominating that series, and it's been remarked about how dominant he is. He has only won 4 races, whereas Max Verstappen has won 9. So that's the difference. I don't know, I'll go through the field. Honestly, there's not really much to say, because it's all been said before this year and nothing has really changed. Most of the drivers finished exactly where you think they would have finished. Aston Martin, they have dropped back a bit. They're not anywhere near where they were at the start of the year. I don't know if they'll continue to develop this car and try and get back up to fight for the top places, or they'll start focusing on next year. I honestly think the latter. I think that'd work better in their favour to really have a go next year. But it's disappointing not to see them in the fight at the top. Maybe it's just a track thing. Maybe these tracks just haven't really suited the Aston Martin. But we'll have to see as we get to Belgium and beyond the summer break if they bring any upgrades. I think it's going to be interesting watching what Aston Martin do. But I think they are definitely the 5th best team now. Ferrari, I think they're behind Mercedes but ahead of McLaren. But McLaren have clearly caught up. I think that McLaren aren't going to score enough points to really trouble Ferrari. but I don't think they're going to finish miles behind them. And that's an achievement for McLaren, but also a very big disappointment for Ferrari. They need to sort themselves out. Mercedes is clearly pacing that car. I don't know where their development's going to go, and they've sort of been going back and forth saying we're going to stop developing this car and we'll move on to 2024, and then they'll say something like they're making this work now, and Hamilton's contract still hasn't been signed. Honestly, Mercedes need to make some decisions, and honestly they probably already have, and this is just, there's some game to it. I don't know what it is, but I don't think they're as secure near the top as they think they are. I think McLaren have proven that the right upgrades at the right tracks can push them above Mercedes. Aston Martin have been finishing ahead of them at times, and you never know with Ferrari, they could suddenly jump back up. So I think the next couple of years are going to be very important for Mercedes. Everyone else, Alpine, another double DNF. It was very unlucky, not their fault. Very messy start to the race. But I think for Alpine, this year has been disastrous. They should have taken advantage of McLaren's bad start, and yet somehow they just haven't. Daniel Ricciardo made his debut and honestly did a lot better than Nick de Vries would have done. He qualified, he got into Q2 and he finished the race in 13th, which Nick de Vries has got a 12th place finish, but Ricciardo looked a lot steadier in that car. And I'm sure he'll score points sometime this year. AlphaTauri are still last in the constructors. They only have 2 points, so they desperately need him, and I think Ricciardo will bring them points. And I said I'll talk about Nick de Vries making his silly comments. It's a simple thing. It's just he lost his seat. I'm sure he was bitter, but all he had to say is, I'm disappointed to lose my seat, but I respect the team at Red Bull and I hope they have good luck for the rest of the year or something. But he came out and he said, oh, this is the team that cheated Hamilton out of his 8th title. That is pretty much the dumbest thing you can say, because no team's going to hire you. What if Alfa Romeo were thinking, maybe we can mix it up a bit, maybe get rid of Bottas or 2024, this Nick de Vries guy wasn't so bad, we'll get him. But now they'll look at it and say, well, we don't want someone who's going to slag off the team when it doesn't go his way, so we're going to go with someone else. I don't think Alfa Romeo would have signed him, and maybe Nick de Vries was just resigned to the fact that his Formula 1 career was over. But even teams outside of Formula 1 are going to think twice about taking a driver who is happy to slag off the team. Unless you're Fernando Alonso and you can get away with it, it's a bad look. Brendan Hartley did not do this. And yes, Red Bull have a very, at times, gung-ho replacement strategy where they just switch drivers around randomly. But most of the time they deserve it. Daniel Kvyat was on a very bad run and he had taken out a couple of drivers and been given the name Torpedo. Maybe it was a good idea to swap him out. It just so happened they put Max Verstappen in that car and he's won 2 championships already in nearly 40 races. Doesn't always work out like that. Sometimes they replace Gasly with Albon and nothing really changes. I think Nick de Vries should have been given more time. He's literally had 10 races this season, maybe 11. And it's clearly AlphaTauri is not a quick car, because even Yuki Tsunoda is struggling and he's been there 2 years already. They should have given him at least to the summer break, seen what happened. And as I said in a previous video, I think there's a lot more to it than that. But you never go to your next job interview and start talking smack about your past jobs, because it's not a good look, and no company, especially companies and teams that are nowadays so involved with PR and things like that, I think honestly Nick de Vries has just sunk his own career. I'm sure someone will hire him. He is a Formula E and Formula 2 champion, and he has Formula 1 experience. He has scored points in Formula 1. I'm sure there's a World Endurance team who will jump at the chance to sign him up. I'm sure there's a team in Formula E that will take him back. But you don't want to risk it by making comments like that. As for everything else, honestly, Williams, Alex Albon in 11th was a pretty decent drive for him, but it was a quiet race for the back end of the field. You didn't really see much of it. This was a pretty bad race. I did not enjoy the Hungarian Grand Prix. And Spa is my favourite track in the world. And clearly it needs changing. It's had a very dark few years. It'll be interesting to see if they do anything to the track before Formula 1 gets there. It's somehow slow down Eau Rouge. I don't know. They've not really said anything about it, surprisingly. But we'll have to see for next week. Which, thankfully, after that, we get a few weeks break. And I think we need it from Formula 1 at the moment, because there's been far too many races this year. There's still loads left, and it's not been a very interesting year for Formula 1. Max Verstappen breaking records. Red Bull, is it 12 in a row now? That's a new record. That is very, very impressive. Max Verstappen, 7 race wins in a row. It's just incredible. And even Lewis Hamilton, most pole positions at a single racetrack, something like that. I would have thought he'd done that at Silverstone. For some reason, I just thought Silverstone was his most successful track, but apparently the Hungaroring is. And Spa, can anyone stop Verstappen? At this point, only mechanical failure can stop Verstappen. I don't see any other way of him losing. But hopefully they'll keep this new qualifying format for Spa as well. It'll be interesting to see how it works there. And so with that, I will ask you to subscribe to the channel, as many of you already have. Leave your thoughts down below. Discuss what you thought of the Formula 1. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.
The monster trucks.
Well, I think it's quite good. I think the truck here is really big, and I like how it pulls the car apart. It makes my third toe really happy.
What are you concerned about the environment and the damage these cars are doing?
I don't even know what the environment is or was or what it could be. I just think that the environment is a theory created by a little child called Greta Van Fleet. And anyway, I think the monster trucks are creating a new environment for rock and roll.
And America.
I'll just sit my down.
Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. Yesterday was the Hungarian Grand Prix. Unfortunately, I did not have time to talk about it yesterday, so we are doing it today in the morning of the Monday afterwards. It wasn't a very interesting race, but the things around the race have been very interesting for Formula 1. I think we are in desperate need of a summer break. Everyone's getting a bit tetchy. It actually wasn't just in Formula 1, in Formula E and IndyCar as well. We saw, sarcastic clapping and people moaning on the radio quite a lot. I think everyone just needs to kind of have some time off, have a break, have a breather, get their head back in the game. It was an embarrassing race for a lot of people. And as I said, the racing itself wasn't particularly interesting. It was about what you'd expect. There's no real shocks at the Hungarian Grand Prix. McLaren 1-2 is a fantastic result for them. Oscar Piastri winning. I've seen stuff about how Lando Norris's attitude overshadowed the race and Oscar Piastri's achievement. It does not. It's a fantastic achievement by Oscar Piastri, and no one can take that away from him. Doesn't matter how he did it. He was the pace setter. It's interesting from McLaren. You would think they'd want Lando Norris to be in with a shout of the Drivers' Championship, and with Max Verstappen losing points at this race, it was a good chance to close a very large gap. Maybe McLaren are already conceding defeat on that front, but it's short-sighted on their part, I think. I maybe would have just let Lando Norris take the win. It's going to be interesting to see how this continues on. I don't think Lando's attitude really made him look all that good, but I can understand his frustration. It shows a little bit of a lack of ambition on McLaren's part as well. And they only have a week to sort this out before we get to Spa. Maybe we'll see more fireworks. Maybe Lando is going to be trying his hardest to get his own back. I'm sure he'll be doing everything he can to win at Spa, as he should. As for everyone else, Max Verstappen was the other interesting one. The move at the start where he went wide, and both he and Lando were on the radio. He had to give the place up. it annoys me because in a race, I honestly think that Max Verstappen was entirely entitled to that place. I don't think he should have even been in consideration for being penalised for it. It was a fair enough manoeuvre. My issue is these track limit rules absolutely suck, and they have for years. There was a time when I just don't remember this being as much of a problem as it is now. And honestly, I think the answer to track limits is don't have any. Let anyone use any bit of tarmac they want. Now, if you don't want them going in certain places, like say they could just cut a chicane, like just don't take the first corner at Monza, for example. Have no track limit rules, but have a consequence for going where you don't want them to go. Like at Monza, where they have the barriers you have to go around. They don't want to be hitting those, even those polystyrene boards, they do not want to be hitting them. The advertising hoardings, they don't want to hit them. So, there you go, that's the solution to track limits. It's safe, no one's going to get hurt, but it's still enough to get drivers to avoid hitting it. Or maybe have some gravel at the first corner at Hungary, closer to the track where the track limits are. You don't want cars going out there, there's a reason for them not to. If you had gravel there, they wouldn't do it as often. Occasionally you'd get someone who messes up and goes out. Boo-hoo, they've got to drive through the gravel. Maybe they get stuck, that sucks for them, but they shouldn't have been out on the gravel. I don't want like concrete walls placed around every track telling them all the street circuits would get no overtaking, people would crash and just be out of the race all the time. But this nonsense that, I think as Martin Brundle said at last race, that they got rid of gravel tracks because they don't want cars retiring from the race because the race is more exciting with everyone in it. That's partially true, but at the same time, if Max ended up out there and there was gravel or a tyre wall and he crashed and was out of the race, does that not make the championship more interesting? Is that not the kind of drama you want? And again, it's on him to avoid doing that. I hate track limits. I hate these rules where you went wide at the first corner. There's not really anything Max could have done. I mean, if you want him to attack at the start, and of course we all do, then he has to go for it, and he shouldn't be punished for that. No one should. It's ridiculous. It wouldn't take all that much to sort this problem out. And yet, here we are. We still can't seem to figure out that having races decided by penalties, and the only overtakes we're really getting are people who have to give up places because they overtook in a way they're not supposed to, is not very entertaining for fans. And it'd be far more entertaining if we didn't have to deal with this constantly. Everything else in this race, Max Verstappen did have a really bad one. He lost his head completely. I'm very impressed with the strength of the Red Bull because when he bounced over Lewis Hamilton's front wheel, that was a big hit and the car continued on. Honestly, that amazes me because they look fragile, but they do seem to be able to take a hit these days, these cars. So kudos to the strength of the cars, I guess. But this was a terrible race for Max Verstappen. Tyre strategy just didn't seem to go his way, even when he was catching. Like he caught Lewis Hamilton. If he was patient, he'd have probably got past because he had the fresher tyres. He was never going to catch the McLarens. Even with the ridiculousness going on out front, they were well clear of third place. If he was just patient, I think he went for it, but with Alex Albon there as well, and either that putting him off, or because Lewis Hamilton had to go around Alex Albon as well, that put Max off. Whether it was the airflow behind the cars in front caught him out, it was still a bad shot, and he went hard on the brakes, locked up far too fast into the first corner. Stupid mistake, and it's something he should never have done. Clearly it's a bad move, and he should be better than that. I think this will be a very embarrassing moment for him that's going to get brought up a lot. But maybe it's something that he can learn from, I guess, if he needs to. Because if he just waited another lap, he could have had another go. I think at some point he would have done it fairly easily. I don't think he'd have caught the McLaren regardless. Maybe the team need to come on the radio and say, take your time. Don't worry about the cars in front of Hamilton. Just concentrate on getting third place, at least. Whether or not it affects his championship, I don't know. He didn't drop that many points, and obviously he had a big gain on Lando Norris at Austria. But it was still a bad race for him. As for everyone else in the field, it was pretty mediocre, as I said. We did get some overtakes, but not a whole bunch. It was the usual suspects out front. Ferrari did okay. Sergio Perez crashed in Q1 again and didn't really have a great race. He didn't make up all that much time. He was still kind of best of the rest. George Russell as well in the midfield, he struggled. Lance Stroll scored decent points, so good for him. Tsunoda scored points again. But otherwise, it was pretty much the usual bunch. And it's the usual bunch finishing outside the points as well. One retirement from this race, which was Gasly. Yeah, the race, I honestly wasn't blown away, and I didn't think I would be. In fact, honestly, it was slightly more interesting just because of all the whining on the radio and things going on track. Whining on the radio, where they pretty much all did it in this race. It really is the exact same thing as footballers getting touched by a light breeze and then rolling around on the floor for half an hour. I really wish it's something that would go away, but I doubt it will anytime soon. I don't think the FIA should be able to hear the drivers. It might give them less impetus to moan on the radio all that much. We have Spa this weekend. Last chance for Perez. Could be. There's a lot of rumours going around. I think even Red Bull have admitted to not being all that happy with him. And they have backed him. You can't say that Red Bull haven't backed him. They gave him a new contract and everything. It would cost them money to replace him and get rid of him. But honestly, they probably should. He is having a terrible year. But even at his best, he's not been great. He's taken a few wins here and there. But he's so far beneath the level of Max Verstappen that it's just embarrassing for him at this point. I wouldn't mind seeing Sergio Perez leave Formula 1 now. And that's kind of been true for the last couple of years anyway. Yuki Tsunoda to replace him? Yes, absolutely. I think that's an easy choice. He's definitely driving well enough to do it. So I can't see why you wouldn't give him a shot in place of Perez. It would mean, and they should get rid of Daniel Ricciardo as well. But if you're... I can't imagine them swapping Yuki and Sergio and having Sergio Perez and Daniel Ricciardo at RB. It's supposed to be a junior team, yet you have two really experienced drivers who are underperforming. I don't think you'd replace Daniel Ricciardo and Sergio Perez at the halfway point of the year. Too much change at once. But I think next year we'll see Liam Lawson back in that car, which will be great because he absolutely deserves it after driving so well last year in the few races he got to do. There are other Red Bull juniors who could get that second seat, such as Isaac Hadjar. It's not out of the question. That remains to be seen. I have issues with Isaac Hadjar despite being a title contender in Formula 2. He loses his head a lot as well. He gets very fiery on the radio. I don't think that's going to fly in Formula 1. I don't think it really flies in Formula 2 all that much, but he does it a lot. But the seats at Red Bull are interesting. Haas as well will have a completely new lineup next year. Ollie Behrman's coming in, and obviously we don't know who's going to have the second seat. Andrea Kimi Antonelli has admitted that he's not sure about taking an F1 seat, which is incredibly intelligent on his part. I think it would be the biggest mistake of his career to take a second Mercedes seat at such a young age. Obviously, Carlos Sainz still hasn't got a seat announced despite talks ongoing, presumably Williams, but maybe he'll jump to Haas instead and try and stay in the Ferrari stable. If it doesn't work out with Lewis Hamilton and something happens that causes him to leave, they could just chuck Carlos Sainz straight back in that Ferrari. It's not out of the question, so maybe taking the Haas seat wouldn't be such a bad shout. And Haas are doing really well. Sacking Gunter Steiner has done them a world of good. They've improved massively this year. It's honestly the best I've seen Haas run in a long time. But even including the fact that Magnussen has had his issues this year, Hulkenberg has been doing so well in qualifying, and he's been taking the odd points finish here and there. Magnussen has scored points. They're generally in the upper end of the midfield. It wouldn't be a bad shout for Carlos Sainz to join Haas. So that's my feelings on the Hungarian Grand Prix. It was a bit of an emotional one for a lot of people. Wasn't necessarily the most exciting race ever. It had its moments, I guess. It was better than I thought it would be. But this weekend we have the Spa Grand Prix, which is one of my favourite tracks in the world. I love Spa-Francorchamps, and hopefully we get a fantastic race there this weekend. Will it have championship implications? It remains to be seen. What's the fallout of all of the events from Hungary going to be? Again, I'll keep you updated if anything happens. I'm not expecting big changes before the summer break, but this summer break is long overdue. It does feel a lot later in the year, and I think the drivers do definitely need a holiday at this point. So let me know what you thought in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of the McLaren situation, what you thought of Max Verstappen. Do you think Lando Norris can catch Max Verstappen, or do you think this is still a fairly easy, comfortable win in the championship for Max this year? Let me know what you think. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more motorsport content. Thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry this video is so late, and have a good one.